So this is kind of just a basic presentation based on my experiences as a pen tester. And maybe there'll be some things in here where you guys might have thought this some of these things at one point in time. And you may be able to relate. So if this first slide is shocking to you, you may have meant to go to the other presentation. So hopefully you're in the right place. But we're going to talk a little bit about the laws and consequences of cyber insecurity, and how ultimately the ultimate consequence could be the likely destruction of mankind. But I'll get back to that later. Hello. Page down. Hello. Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. So you're probably familiar with some of these, the hack of at least one of these companies in the past couple of years. And obviously, these aren't the only companies that you might have heard of that got hacked, but these are some obviously well-known, pretty large companies, government entities, things of that nature. I'm just going to throw out a couple of quotes that were made fairly recently. One is, the Chinese have penetrated every major corporation of any consequence in the United States and taken information. That was stated by Mike McConnell, former director of the NSA. And my other quote is, there are two kinds of big companies in the United States. There are those who've been hacked by the Chinese and those who don't know they've been hacked by the Chinese. And that's by the current director of the FBI, James Comey. Hello. Double click too.
Yeah. Maybe escape. You have no idea. Back. There. Which one do you want to?
Oh, so the arrows are working.
The arrows
Great.
are working now. There.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about your company? When you see hacks in the news about these entities, do you just ignore them? Do you not pay attention? Well, just consider those as warning shots for you, and that you should really be introspective, start taking seriously what the security at your company is. Okay, disclaimer. All right. So I've been doing NVAPTs, or Network Vulnerability Assessment pen tests, for a number of years. Social engineering is part of that, where you might make phone calls or send phishing emails. And I also occasionally work on incidents. Now, this is actually who I think I am. The reality hurts, though. This is actually who I really, in reality, am. So I'm going to start with a basic rule, or for your scientists or mathematicians out there, an axiom, and that is your company will never be secure. Okay, and there's a number of reasons for this, and I've listed some there, and we'll get into each of those areas. So there's three ways you can address risk. You could ignore it. You could address it or mitigate it, try and mitigate it. Or you could transfer it with like a cyber insurance. That's sort of a new thing, still kind of being worked out. So you want to raise the cost of exploitation so that attackers will move on to easier targets. So that's kind of a goal. Okay, so we tend not to want to try and understand things. But really, like every one of us should try and understand technology a little bit, at least a cursory understanding. Because it often seems like magic to us, and it's really not. So media tends to fuel the fears of things and misunderstandings, and oftentimes you see in the news that attacks. Oh, this was a sophisticated attack against us. You see that all the time, over and over again. In reality, at least the initial attack is not sophisticated in most cases. You're talking about a phishing email to an employee of a company. I mean, that's so we like to implement things without understanding the consequences of what we're doing. Devices that are placed on the internet, get immediately attacked. Just a few minutes. I guess you've seen things out there. Within the first 7 minutes of putting a device on the internet, it starts getting attacked. Most companies don't know that they're being exploited, or what we like to term pwned. And on average, a company becomes aware of an exploitation of their network after 2/3 of a year. And oftentimes they're notified by a third party, like the FBI or somebody who was being attacked because they went through your company to attack them. So, one thing is, when we don't understand, there's this expectation that we can quickly fix this. Yeah, we expect it. But unfortunately, reality isn't that way. So the world is, when you connect to the internet, the world's at your doorstep, literally at your doorstep in the virtual world, the entire internet. So, and if you take care of if you have a Cisco router out on the internet and you keep it patched and up to date, you're doing good. And Cisco does a great job of keeping on top of those things. One of the issues that we often see is when a company has custom applications, so they develop their custom things. So when we see that, we love that, and you better watch out because nobody else cares about your custom applications. They don't care about your particular web app that your in-house developer has created. They could care less, unless you're being targeted. And that's, we often see these custom applications, and because no one's really attacked them, specifically targeting them, they're often vulnerable. So just the reality is that in defense, on the offensive side, and I've been on that side, I understand, you got to secure everything. You're worried about everything. Whereas on offense, the attacker, they only have to find one thing, and they can gain a foothold. So the proper implementation of the security technologies is a challenge. I think the industry, they put a lot of good security features into products. Oftentimes the problem is that they're turned off by default. And they expect you to understand that they're supposed to be turned on, but oftentimes things don't get turned on, So, things turned on, security things by default turned on is good. That's what, I think we should demand more than turn off by default and expect it to be turned on. So I often hear, the inside of our network, yeah, we don't do as good a job of security, but that's all right. We're really hardened to the internet facing, to the external. And that's good, but you got to realize really just one click away from the outside to the inside. And once again, phishing is a perfect example of that. So when we do our assessments, we don't use 0 day. So we sometimes find 0 days, oftentimes just by accident. Our scanners might find it, but we don't specifically attempt to create 0 days. And we don't need to. We still have a good success rate without, having 0 days. And if somebody doesn't know what a 0 day is, it's just that it's an unpublished vulnerability in a product or application, whatever. So one statistic, 99% of exploited vulnerabilities were compromised more than a year after they were published. So obviously, patching hygiene isn't up to speed, and we find, we still find to this day Microsoft vulnerabilities we love to exploit. 08067 is one of our favorites. Configure came out because of that. We love that vulnerability, and we still see it even to this day. And that's been 7-8 years now. Oftentimes they're on systems that are just kind of maybe legacy systems. They don't use them anymore, whatever, but for whatever reason they still have them turned on, kind of shoved to the side, not thought about, but still on the network, still accessible. So one thing, of course, is security is at odds with profit. So, we just got to get that product out. Down the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I mean, it's, one question, how are these big companies being hurt by breaches? Yeah, I think in some cases they are. Though I just saw TJ Maxx, they're about to open like 1,000 new stores or something. Of course, TJ Maxx was that company that their parent got popped, and millions and millions of credit cards, all that. Target, they're all, all those companies are still around. They're still alive. Now, the smaller companies, some have gone out of business as a result of being exploited. So things can be made secure. It's really, the question is, how workable is it once you've made things secure enough? So there's this middle ground that you have to go with. You still have to have usability, along with security. So, and you may not realize it, but you're part of an escalating war in the computer security world. How many admins do we have out there? Security, database, network. Anyone? I'm giving out goodies. Anyone? Admins? Willing to admit it? All right, well, you can come up afterwards and get these if you're an admin. This was kind of a setup, so you guys were right not to take those. All right, so IT people, we're unruly. I'm one of them. So we're unruly people, right? So we're lazy, okay? Let's admit it to ourselves. We are lazy, okay? We say we're efficient, right? In the name of efficiency, but really we're lazy. So that's what we exploit. We exploit your laziness. So if you're working as an admin in a company, we take advantage of that in our assessment work. So, it's not totally your fault. You're overworked. You tend to wear many hats, You're oftentimes powerless in the decision making, so you know the right decisions to do, but it just goes up the chain and doesn't go anywhere. So now oftentimes you don't understand security. So in a lot of ways, that's not your fault. You know, IT schools don't teach it. I mean, they're getting better now. The NSA is putting some money in some of these schools and awareness is going up, but it's not taught. So we often find when people get real defensive when we go to do work for them, yeah, they may be trying to hide something, whether it's the, you know, incompetence or whatever. And you know, turfism plays a role in that. I mean, everyone takes ownership of things, so it is, you know, it's their baby or whatever. So somebody's, you know, slapping their baby around, you know, coming in and doing that. So it's understandable. Yeah, anytime we see pride or arrogance from people, yeah, that typically, yeah, it doesn't go well for them in the end. All right, unfortunately, we have to deal with humans. And so they tend to ignore your corporate policies and training, right? Training, all these policies, wonderful policies we put out. I mean, you still need them. You still have to have that. But, you know, people will ignore them. So they click on links and emails. So stats out there show about a fourth of the recipients that get phishing emails open them up. That's what we tend to find in our assessments. Now I'm going to have a little quiz here, and somebody wins a big prize for this. So raise your hand, don't blurt out the answer, please. Some of you might be disqualified from answering, you know. Okay, this is a phishing question. All right, so there are some terms that they use for phishing that are out there. Okay, there's three, I would say three big terms. No, yeah, 3 or 4. All right, you just have general spam. So spamming out there for whatever, some product, right? You have phishing, which is, I guess, trying to get you, nefarious things might be behind that. There's spear phishing, which is kind of targeted specifically toward a company. There's a third or a fourth term where emails are specifically targeted to your C-levels. Does anybody know what that might be? Let's see. All right, who likes candy? All right, this man, he likes candy, and I think he knows the answer, so.
Whaling?
Whaling, all right. Yes. Congratulations, you get a pot of gold. Yep. All right, so it's a term that's really not heard too much in the media, but whaling. So yeah, and I think you see that more and more with ransomware now. So these emails are being sent. You know, there's some you know, background discovery done. Who's the C-levels at a company, and just very few emails are sent to those C-levels. Very targeted, saying, you know, whatever, we need the W-2s or whatever it is sent, you know, and it looks like it's coming from somebody else in the company. So, but whaling, yep.
Wire me some money.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. Yep, that's very common, and we've seen that, yep. Okay, so the humans like to give out credentials over the phone. Yay, good for us. They choose bad passwords. So when users are given a choice, they tend to use bad passwords that we can crack fairly easily. And they like to store unencrypted passwords on the network. I'm sure none of your companies, your people ever do that, right? But we find this all the time, and please stop it, because it's just too easy. People, you know, if you have like an internal file sharing system, everybody has an account on. Inevitably, we just do a quick search. You know, if it's a Windows environment, just do a quick search on a share. You know, just show me all file names with password in it. Yeah, inevitably, all right, these pop up. Oh, unencrypted passwords, not only to company resources, but to personal resources. So all unencrypted. It's like, I don't know why you people are doing this, but you do it. So stop it. Okay. So malware doesn't care, right? So it's cold, heartless thing. It just doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what kind of day you're having. It doesn't matter. It's just, it's the Terminator, right? He's just after you, right? And he doesn't care. So exploitation is opportunistic, and basically I'll take whatever you give me. So, and oftentimes, especially on an internal network, that's a lot of stuff you give me to potentially exploit. So we often see that breaches turn into parties, and we've seen this, I've seen it working incidents, and you can go out on the internet and do a Google search and see it out there as well. There's, one entity breaches a website, then you see others, then they'll advertise that to their friends, whatever, and then others will join in. And so you start seeing, so if you get on a compromised website, you may see one program, one web shell that gives access, but you'll also see, like when you see the file structure, you see a whole bunch of other different kinds. So it's like everybody brings their own to the party. And they have different reasons, whatever those are, of playing with your systems. Okay, so I always like it when we assess larger targets, just because they're more complex environments, and anytime you introduce more complexity to something, it typically tends to be less secure. There's more attack points or whatever. You've got that larger attack surface. It would be nice as possible, and of course that's difficult. It's easier said than done. The KISS principle, keep it simple. But so it's hard to keep track of all the assets. You're herding cats with proper network and data separation. It's rarely found. You've got a database, and you're like, oh yeah, all our proprietary data, the data we care about, oh, it's in the database, and we're watching that thing, and we got it encrypted, whatever. Well, then you also have people who actually have to use that data. Well, guess what? They pull the data out, and then, oh yeah, they're gonna crunch on it on their own systems, right? Put it in the Excel spreadsheet or whatever they're gonna do. And so now you've lost control of your data. Where is your data? So we have emails go out, how many people encrypt emails, right? So especially, sensitive data, so take like a law firm or something, how many law firms encrypt their email to their clients? There's probably some that do, but there's probably some that don't. What about your mobile phone, your mobile stuff, your phones, how much sensitive data do you keep on that? And, people obviously lose their phones. Do you encrypt data on phones? So, and then you'll be pretty surprised about the amount of information that gets published on the internet. It's just hard to keep the data under control. Now, oftentimes I think in big organizations, there's really this lack of accountability. Everyone thinks it's somebody else's job to do whatever it is. So we pretty much always find low-hanging fruit in these environments. Low-hanging fruit is just easy ways to exploit things. And when you think of exploits, you think of software vulnerabilities, but exploits really, that's just a part of computer security. I know that's the big sexy thing that people do or whatever, buffer overflows here or there or whatever, but there's a whole lot more to computer security than just that. There were computer security books written before anybody really even realized buffer overflows existed. The Morris worm, I think, started that or whatever. But, there were computer security books before buffer overflows, so that's just a part of it. All right, this is a huge thing, exploiting trust. So, network environments have built-in infrastructure. Just think of Windows domain. So there's this trust, a lot of trust that goes on. So, and we typically tend to exploit Windows trust the most because that's the environments we run into the most. Though, other environments also have trust relationships set up. We think of a Nix environment, NFS, all the old stuff. I mean, they still have that trust architecture from, 30 years ago or whatever that could be exploited. Now, some of it's by design, just the cost of doing business. We have to be able to trust entities here or there, in the environment. Even third parties, so the supplier chains, right? So I think it was Target that got busted. No.
Home Depot.
Yeah, Home Depot got busted. There was an air conditioning company. Okay. Target. Okay. One of those. Yeah, and so their air conditioner, company had access into the system, and the attackers hopped from a third party into their system because they had this, I guess, 24/7 access in, which I'm sure they didn't need, but for the HVAC folks. But and then you've got back to phishing again. I'm harping on phishing, I know, but the trust. So you just you click on a phishing email, that's a trust. You've trusted that, right? So mobile devices, cloud. Hey, let's throw all our data out in the cloud, right? So do we? We have to trust the cloud then, right? Are all cloud providers trustworthy? Not necessarily, right? No. Some of them do a great job. Others not so much. So you really need to only give as much access as needed. And the big takeaway with trust, I think, and we leverage that, is once you leverage that trust, you look like normal. So your IDS, IPS systems out there, whatever, like you're now normal, part of the normal traffic. You're the domain administrator that has to get access to the server box or whatever, IDS isn't going to fire on that. They're like, oh yeah, they need that. So. And one of our favorites, compliance, right? So check boxes shouldn't rule the day. You probably know this. So I think what it kind of leads to is you don't see the forest through the trees. So you're relying on these checks, right? And you're not really thinking about things. You're not thinking about the potential attack vectors or so it's kind of a mind-numbing exercise. You don't think holistically about everything. And I think oftentimes the spirit of what was intended with, like a PCI compliance or one of those is kind of violated. The assessor might say, hey, you've got an issue on this box with this password. It's weak. And you don't extrapolate and say, oh, well, you take that finding and you go, oh, well, maybe I better check my entire network for weak passwords and all kinds of things. That's just too much work, I guess, but that's what we would like to see. Looking into problem areas. So if you see an area that you've got an issue with, then addressing that across the whole environment. Compliance folks often aren't technical, and so they might not quite get the make the right call or understand things quite right with the environment. But you're performing your due diligence, right? So it's all good. So EMV for PCI has come along, right? That's the big thing, chips on pin, chip and pin, right? So, and that's great. I mean, that's driving towards good things, but it doesn't solve breaches. So there's plenty of other information unrelated to a credit card number that you don't want stolen. You got identity theft with PII, the personally identified information. Your intellectual property, so the Chinese are stealing like all your IP, right? So that doesn't have anything to do with credit cards or that. So, there should be compliance for other besides credit cards, right? So there should be, different compliance, and the HIPAAs and all that kind of start getting, they're getting closer, but they're a little generic, All right. So you need to reduce your attack surface as best you can. Get rid of the unneeded things. So, you may have a server that's running a service that isn't vulnerable today, but it may be vulnerable tomorrow, or become aware that it's vulnerable. It's always been vulnerable, but vulnerable tomorrow. So if you don't need that, get rid of it, right? So reduce the things you don't need out of your environments. Pretty much figure that it's going to take multiple rounds to fix everything. So we'll go in and have repeat customers, and they won't have everything fixed the next time we show up on the doorstep. But that's okay. I mean, as long as they're working towards that, that's important. But and it's difficult. I mean, so your environments need to be constantly tested. Things change. It's dynamic. So, putting in a firewall or an IDS or whatever, that's great, but that's not like the complete solution. It's not, you put these things into your environment, these products, and you're done. They need to be monitored, actually taken advantage of. Oftentimes that's not done, but and they can be subverted, but you still need them. You still need a baseline. So AVs, the antiviruses, I don't sweat much over antiviruses. Pretty much can get around them, but you still want them because you still have these. You still want that baseline. So just if somebody got phished or whatever, and some stupid virus, and you still want hopefully the AV to catch it or whatever. So you still need these things. So the cost of things would be way cheaper as far as security goes if they were just integrated at the beginning into the development life cycle of things, whatever those things are. But you'll see out there, and it'll continue. You'll see this vicious cycle. So they put a new product on the market, and inevitably somebody finds vulnerabilities in it, right? So because we just had to get it to market, right, as quick as we can. And we don't care about security so much, but yeah. And some of the presentations for like the automobile stuff today is sort of one of those, I guess. Yeah, it's like, get that automobile stuff out there or whatever, and yeah. We just got to get it to market, and security. So, but you'll see that. You'll see that with new stuff coming out. So learn from your mistakes. Takes time and effort. Do defense in depth. So just kind of assume, if you're running a network environment, assume that it's going to get compromised. The person is going to click on the email in the phishing. Then what? What kind of countermeasures? What do you have in place if a user's inbox gets compromised? Are they running least privilege? Even if there are, there's ways to escalate privilege. Just keep that mind, have that mindset of a defense in depth where, what if, then what do we do type thing. So your goal is to minimize risk, not eliminate it. You'll never be able to completely eliminate the risk, but the goal is to minimize it. Okay, before questions, let's see. All right, let's get back to my first thing I said about the destruction of mankind. So this guy right here, he could be the answer to our computer security problems. He could be the ultimate solution, right? And so how many of you heard about, they put IBM Watson on the computer security, whatever. I don't know what he's trying to solve, but yeah. So if you, so let's put AI on it. And I think that is the solution, ultimately, is to have AI. Some of these products are rolling out with it too. But let's think about this for a minute before we actually do this, right? So a couple of people like Elon Musk and was it Stephen Hawking kind of came out and warned about AI, right? So thinking about it for just a minute, they're right. Like, so you're the dominant species on a planet, right? And why? Because you use your brain, right? So let's create like a competitor to that, right? And ones that don't really, probably would think, yeah, these humans, they are going to become a problem, or they are a problem, right? So I don't know why we would develop that, but but I guess we're going to do it. I don't know how much sense that makes, but that's where we're going. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I don't really have any questions, though.
Wait, yeah.
Okay, I don't have any questions, but I will interject about the AI thing.
Yeah.
They're just coded instructions. They are software that progress in a way that we allow them to progress. So they're only going to become like ASI's, artificial superintelligence,
Yes.
if we just let them.
Here, I'm glad you made that, because actually this is the important point I wanted to make about that. So is everybody familiar with like the 3 laws of robotics and things like that? Like, all right, don't harm humans and all that. That's great. Like, and we'll probably set all that up, and it'll be like, yes, the humans will not be harmed, right? Except, unless there's a vulnerability, right? Computer security. So it comes back to computer security. There's a hole in the system or whatever, and it gets exploited, right? By the AI. Yeah, I mean, we're screwed. So like, unless we get a solution to computer security, right, we're going to be destroyed by the AI.
The whole thing about the keynote too is emergent, unpredicted. So you could set up 3 very clear laws, but build complexity around them, and they start behaving
Right.
in ways unintended.
Right. Yep. And that's what that's what my team does. We do the unintended, or the they don't realize, you could do that, or I mean, that's what we're doing. As humans, imagine the AI is doing it.
I have a
Yes.
question. I don't know if this
Yeah.
works or not. Are you doing more testing with Internet of Things related devices? Because, we talked a lot about servers, and everybody likes to talk about autonomous cars. But in reality, like light bulbs are starting to run servers.
That's right.
And those are going to be prevalent everywhere. All these little bitty Internet of Things. Are you running more tests against?
So we don't do so much product black box testing per se. We're more of just the traditional, like what you'd think, the breaking into the network type thing. Or we've done some more specific type of testing like that, but we in general, no, we don't.
Do you think that will be a bigger area in the future?
Yeah, obviously it will be. You got the smart meters that they're already hacking away on, and your refrigerator. You don't want your refrigerator attacking you or whatever. In the or whatever. Or spoiling your meat. I mean, that's or whatever. You're Skynet, right? That's right. That's right. The first indications of Skynet, right? So no, I mean depending on what you can do, and they'll say, well, there's these fail-safe mechanisms. Even if something got hacked, it won't be the, whatever the default is, it's benign or whatever. But so let's take traffic signaling systems, right? So a guy told me, well, if someone were to get in there and hack a traffic signal light, they'll all be red. Like you could never turn them all green, so everybody smashes into each other. But if they all turned red, you're still going to have chaos. It might be delayed a little bit, but everyone stopped, right? So like, and it becomes this craziness, right? Still, so, yeah. Yeah, I think implementing things without realizing the consequence, smart homes, those, it's like, do we really think of what we're doing here? What the capabilities are or any of that, so yeah. Anything else? Nope. All righty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of the
Oh,
low
yeah.
hanging fruit options that you find, how many of those are also, like, just a rough guess, how many of those are also low hanging fixes versus major re-architectures or remediation projects?
It just depends on what it is. Passwords are, well, we would like to see non-reusable passwords, obviously. So yeah, that would be a major fit, but we know that's not going to happen. So changing a password, sure. Now changing a password for everyone on the domain, when the domain gets compromised, that might be a little bit of a more difficult undertaking. The architecture, the underlying architecture, the trust and whatnot, Microsoft, Microsoft's been dealing with that for, whatever, decades or whatever. So, some things aren't so easy to fix. And of course, my job's fun because I can just say, hey, fix this, and I don't actually have to fix it. So I'm like, but.
See you next year.
Yep. Hope you've got it fixed by the next time I come around. But yeah. Some are, some aren't. Yeah. Yep. Anybody else? All right, thanks.